Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, be sure to click around, have a look at all these Star Wars, Pokemon, Game of Thrones, any kind of nerdy TV, film related content we've got. But today we are looking at the first installments of all three Star Wars trilogies, The Phantom Menace, A New Hope, The Force Awakens. We're going to be comparing them in 7 different categories, which you'll see as we go along, and we'll score them in each round. So the winner will receive 3 points, second place 2, last place 1. At the end, we add them all up and see which was the best installment. Now, some of this is going to be down to my preference. Some of it I will try and be impartial to, but obviously I do have a favourite. You can probably guess what it is. But once we're finished with these, we'll look at the second one and the third installments now Rise of Skywalker is out. Let's start with the first one. Well, technically the fourth one. Let's not get into that. The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace begins mixed. It kicks off with a lot of action, showing the Jedis as something respected with great lightsaber duels, the likes of which we hadn't seen at the time. In that way it was a spectacle, but also, unfortunately, it's rife with terrible accent choices. We do then move on to a really cool underwater chase scene, which again I think is a great example of this film. There's spectacle, but it doesn't drive the story. The thing is, unlike the jazzy lightsaber battles, this really adds nothing to the movie. It doesn't drive the story, it doesn't drive the narrative, it doesn't build character, it does nothing to push things forward. We then finally meet this story's main character, Anakin Skywalker. Love him or hate him, he's huge in the whole saga. And honestly, not a lot else noteworthy happens, and that's one of the big problems with this film. The amount of wasted time. You could probably cut down this to a 20-25 minute film and it would still have the same impact. You would get all you need to know, you would get all the cool scenes and none of the fat, I was going to say fat, I guess that covers it nicely. Pluses and minuses for that one, but I think nobody expected much else. Now, A New Hope begins in the middle of a battle and we're introduced to the lovable Tin Can within the first 5 minutes. It's surprising and kind of impressive the amount of little human interaction there is to start with. Most of the dialogue coming from 2 droids. Now we do get this scene, and if it's handled differently, the film ends here. The Empire win, they've destroyed the droids, they've destroyed the plans that were escaping. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. I guess they needed to explain how they escaped. We get no mention or showing of the Force, Jedi, Sith, any of that for a while yet. Focusing on the droids and their journey. This film is a lot more focused and jumps around a lot less than the other 2. We follow the same story and everything flows perfectly into each other. The pacing can't really be faulted. And that's one of the bonuses of this over the other 2, I think. It introduces new characters, creatures, unlike in The Phantom Menace, uses them to great effect. As we then meet the Jawas, some of my favourite little bastards from this saga. Fun fact, I actually met a Jawa at a comic convention in London, and he tried to steal my brother's hoodie, so just as mischievous in real life. Again, similar to The Phantom Menace, we don't meet our hero until almost 20 minutes into the film. The Phantom Menace took a lot longer, which I think only works to their detriment. We want to meet this character as soon as possible. Although, saying that, we could have probably waited. Once we finally get a mention of a Jedi, he's referred to as a crazy hermit, showing them in a completely different light in this film, lacking the respect they once had. We get some gorgeous shots, but we'll look at that kind of thing separately. One thing you can say, at no point you feel bored. It flows perfectly and you enjoy the story unravelling. Now for the final contender, The Force Awakens. The initial first 5 minutes I think in this film are of my favourite of the 3. It creates dread straight away, akin to A New Hope, but it feels very claustrophobic as Poe goes to escape. Not quite as clear cut as the droids. Because it's a human, it adds that aspect of emotion to it and you can put yourself in his place. It's hard or near impossible to accomplish what Darth Vader did, but he comes across more of a brute in the first scene we see him in, where he crushes someone with his hand. Kylo Ren shows the power of the Force, stopping a blaster in midair, something we hadn't seen before. Another brilliant note of this film, which I wish they carried forward into The Last Jedi, would be the nameless stormtrooper. Giving them character and a name, it adds interest. You think of them differently. Really interesting idea until The Last Jedi comes along, pulls down its pants and shits all over it. We also have Poe Dameron, giving it back and forth with Kylo, showing no fear, a level of cockiness we haven't seen since Han. For a lot of people, the original trilogies are untouchable, and Han is the best character in cinema to them. Now don't get me wrong, I grew up on it and I feel kind of the same, to be honest. But I don't know if it's Oscar Isaac, I don't know if it's because it's a newer film. Poe is the guy for me. But going from a good point to a bad, characters are wasted like Phasma, a badass looking stormtrooper, voiced by Gwendolyn Christie. There is such potential, but it's absolutely wasted in this film and the next. We meet Rey slightly earlier than we did Luke, and ages before Anakin. One a slave, another a farmhand, and now a scavenger. Honestly, I like this one a little more. It makes more sense she has interactions with characters, she has a weapon so she's seen battle, and is generally more active. Rey becoming one of the most powerful Jedis of all time makes more sense. Although saying that, Farmhand to Jedi is a more endearing story, so this one's sort of a toss-up. Poe is tortured and gives in eventually, after again some back and forth with his wit. It's more relatable, he can do wrong and it shows he's human. Our Stormtrooper character is revealed to be Finn as soon as he's named by his new buddy. They have moments escaping together which for me builds a believable bromance. Amazing set pieces and visuals accompanied by good dialogue for character building. Just before what I would consider the end of the beginning, yeah, that doesn't really sound right, but stay with me. We meet Snoke, which adds so much mystery and gives the feel of Palpatine immediately. Whether it's the throne or the aged look, it feels very similar. And Palpatine being one of my favourite characters of all time, I was immediately interested the first time I saw this. Although The Force Awakens relies on nostalgia and hits on a lot of those notes A New Hope does, I would describe A New Hope's beginning as more consistent, but The Force Awakens hits higher notes, but also lower lows. For the first part of the film, and probably the only part of the film, I'm going to give it to The Force Awakens, with A New Hope coming in second. Just stick with me, I think we can all see where this is going to go, but I do think The Force Awakens deserves more love than it gets. It bridges the gap between generations, using nostalgia and old characters, and the stories we know. Some people don't like it, I think it works, but for round one, that's 1 point to The Phantom Menace, 2 to A New Hope, and 3 to The Force Awakens. Now let's take a look at the three films' middle. For me, this is where A New Hope picks up drastically and the others stall out. The Phantom Menace becomes very childish unlike the other movies. We get bizarre catchphrases such as wizard, which is also now this channel's new slogan. A New Hope, like I say, goes from strength to strength. Although the CGI doesn't hold up at all anymore, and it's almost unbelievable this was put in the movie, the actual content itself is so ambitious. We meet Greedo, Han and Chewie, and you can feel the world being created around you. A world a lot of us fans spend so much time in with these films. There is more character building in these scenes than the whole Phantom Menace film, and the saving of Princess Leia turns this movie into an adventure epic. The characters are so well defined, and their characteristics are shown off at every opportunity. By the middle of the film, we know exactly who these characters are, and love them for it. We then get the iconic death of Obi-Wan, the film showing off massive cojones to do this, and it pays off massively in Luke's journey, where The Force Awakens fakes out Poe's death. The middle of The Force Awakens relies too heavily on nostalgia and recreating scenes, all of which is done better in A New Hope. So this one is easily in favour of A New Hope, with The Force Awakens coming in second. The Phantom Menace 2, A New Hope 5, The Force Awakens 5. And now for the end. Considering it's the first instalment of a trilogy, I actually prefer The Force Awakens' open-ended meeting of Luke Skywalker. It's an iconic moment which had everyone talking. The finished up ending of A New Hope was probably because they didn't expect to have another film, and The Phantom Menace may be similar, but it also makes the events of the next couple of movies even more powerful. Whilst A New Hope has the 1 in a million shot, then celebration, The Force Awakens copies that, but with an epic lightsaber battle, and The Phantom Menace building for another film. I think A New Hope takes it, followed by The Force Awakens. The Phantom Menace 3, A New Hope 8, The Force Awakens 7. The most important part of the film for me is the characters, and especially in a trilogy, we need to feel for these characters and follow their journey. Now this one's really tough for me because Luke, Rey and Anakin are some of my favourite characters from each trilogy. I connect to all of them. They all came at different parts in my life. I was a lot younger when I first was introduced to Luke. It was I was still a kid, sort of my teens when it was Anakin, and I've been much more grown up and in love with Star Wars when it was Rey. Again, Han and Poe are right up there, but so is Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Chancellor Palpatine, Darth Maul. Despite the child acting of Anakin and Jar Jar, the first installment does an incredible job with some of its support casting. A New Hope does the best job of it, making it feel like we're on an adventure with some buddies. Poe, Finn and Rey don't really hit their stride until the next movie, and then The Rise of Skywalker. but I think that might come down to having more exposure with the original cast and over a longer period. Either way, it's A New Hope, then The Force Awakens, then The Phantom Menace is dragged down too low by poor characters. The Phantom Menace 4, A New Hope 11, The Force Awakens 9. Next up, we have to look at acting. Now, The Phantom Menace has the likes of Obi-Wan, it has Chancellor Palpatine, it has Qui-Gon Jinn. These are really well, I should probably say their actual names. I mean, I'm sure you know who they are, but the actors that play them, Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson. But the problem is we have Christian Haydenson as a child. Now, in the other films, Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, I absolutely love him. I think he does a better job than people give him credit for. Less so in Attack of the Clones. I don't think he's that bad as a teen or older actor, but as a child, I just don't think it works. A New Hope has James Earl Jones as the iconic voice of Darth Vader, Carrie Fisher acting her ass off, and Harrison Ford, for me, being the most impressive of the cast. The Force Awakens has Oscar Isaacs, Daisy Ridley, and John Boyega holding their own, but also backed up by the same names on the list that we saw in A New Hope. So it's hard to argue against that for me. So I had to give this round to The Force Awakens, followed by A New Hope. The Phantom Menace 5, A New Hope 13, The Force Awakens 12. Now, important in any film are the action scenes, the lightsaber duels, the spaceship battles, it could be chases, anything, we're going to take a look at that. So this is one of the areas the Phantom Menace actually shines. Darth Maul vs Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is an iconic fight now. Considering what we received with Vader vs Obi-Wan in the original, this was such a massive leap forward at the time. A New Hope does have some good scenes in space, and for its time was impressive, but that will be looked at in a different category. So we can't give it too many points for the flashy action. We do get the adventure action which made Star Wars so great and what it is today. I think The Force Awakens has lots of great space scenes and lightsaber fights, namely the end one, but I'm not sure any rival that of Darth Maul. It was a standout moment in the movie, and for that reason I'm giving this round to The Phantom Menace, followed by The Force Awakens. The Phantom Menace 8, A New Hope 14, The Force Awakens 14. Moving into our final category, we have a tie between A New Hope and The Force Awakens. So this one will decide it. Personally, I like both movies. I know people don't like The Force Awakens as much, but I'm a huge fan of it. But our last category is impact. And I don't think anyone would put The Force Awakens above New Hope in this category. A New Hope paved the way for every Star Wars movie after it. It's special, it's a sci-fi movie the likes of which we probably haven't seen yet and probably will never see. For that reason, it's easily number one. The Force Awakens mimics it in so many ways, I had to give the second place to The Phantom Menace. It might have failed, but it tried something different and that's commendable. Final score, The Phantom Menace 10, A New Hope 17, The Force Awakens 15. I'm actually really happy how those scores have turned out. A New Hope is definitely top for me. The Force Awakens comes somewhere after it, and then The Phantom Menace all the way down the bottom. It does have good moments, but not enough to carry it as a good movie. It was a misstep, but I think the trilogy is good. Attack of the Clones, halfway through, is kind of good. Revenge of the Sith is fantastic. One of the best Star Wars movies out there. There is nothing like it. It's a different story. It's a little darker. I absolutely adore that film, so I can't wait till we get to the third installments. If somehow you've stuck all the way through this and you're to this point, first of all, thank you. Second of all, drop in the comments below. Palpatine was right, just so I know you've watched it and we can confuse everyone else. But genuinely, thank you for watching to this point. I can't imagine how long this video is going to end up. But the more of you that enjoy it, the more chance I'll do other Star Wars films like Rogue One, Han Solo, other things like that, Mandalorian, and delve into more Star Wars stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you tune in to part 2, subscribe so you're aware, but until next time.